welcome to the Overprepared DM. My name is Jen.
My name is Nick.
My name is George.
Hello. It is nice to have you with us today, George.
Well, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
That's
Awesome.
so nice. Tell us about you. Who are you? Where can we find you? Tell anybody anything you want.
Hello, world. My name is George W. Ambush. I am a variety streamer on Twitch. I also co-created Quest Vault, a long-form D&D channel where we've got all original songs and art and all kinds of stuff, and that's been an absolute journey. And I play Ulcus Nerix, the Hobgoblin Monk Wizard, who is an absolute blast. He's not min-maxed at all, and he's just so much fun to play.
Clearly. That's awesome.
Well, as with the beginning of all of our podcasts, traditionally now, you can say episode 6. Yes. It's a tradition now. Yeah. Nick starts us off with the same question.
Yep, every single time. So what's one thing that you did the first time you DM'd or in your earlier DMing career that you definitely would not do now? Something that you'd go back in time and tell yourself, stop it. You're being overprepared.
I know. I have an answer for this. So the first time that I ever DM'd, I made the mistake of instead of kind of like having everything happen in exposition before the game started, like me describing like how they ended up in the situation, I let them start playing, and then I took them to the place, like I took them to like where the first scene was supposed to be. So I kind of like it was a little ridiculous. I let them meet in a tavern because one of them wanted to be a stripper in a tavern. So I was like, that's fine. We can work with that. But then I had them arrested, and that was just a really bad idea because I wanted to get them in front of a ruler to give them, and I overcomplicated it, and it was it didn't go super well. The rest of the game actually surprisingly went pretty well. They did everything that I expected them to. I set up my ruler as a dickhead, and they ran off with the MacGuffin, and that was exactly what I was hoping that they would do. So everything else went swimmingly. I don't think that players should ever be arrested like in scene. Like you can explain like you've been arrested in the past, but I just think it's a really bad idea to take away the players' what's the word I'm looking for here?
Agency. Their agency.
Agency. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, that's also a good lesson in starting small too. That's like your first time DMing. I did the same thing. I had this big, grand story to play out for them. Gods and demons were involved, and all this, and then that for level 1, like what are they gonna do? You know, start small. Don't overcomplicate it. They're gonna fight goblins, so just back it up a little bit and take it from there. That's definitely the player agency thing, and you don't realize how hard it is to take that away from the players when all they want is their agency. So that's all that you have in a role-playing game. Yeah.
Like that is it. Like the entire game is their agency and their character, and when you change that, like it hurts. It hurts as a player. Like I saw like 2 of my players check out like at that moment. Like they were engaged up until that moment. Like we were laughing because the tavern scene was like ridiculous. And then I saw one person pull out his phone, and I went, oh no. And another person, he just kind of like sat back and crossed his arms. And I went, oh, shit. Is it all right if I curse?
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Of course.
It's fine.
Cool.
It's fine.
And I was really saddened in that moment because I wanted everyone to have so much fun at the table, and they didn't in that moment. And it ended up coming back, like I said, but it was a really big lesson. And I had heard Matthew Colville mention something similar about like not arresting players because it never goes well. And I wish I had listened. But I was like, no, this is going to be different. It's just going to be like for part of a scene, and they're not actually like arrested. But I still, nope, never again.
I think that brings up a good topic that we sort of touched on last podcast was cinematic sessions versus like allowing players to play out what's going to happen. Like, you already have what's planned out, and you just kind of talk through a scene, and they have no interjection spots because you just want to get them from point A to point B, but cinematically. I had an experience where this had happened. I was DMing the end of a dungeon. It was crumbling, and they were running, and one of them had just picked up a homebrew staff that I made, and he wanted, in the middle of this huge scene where I thought that I was clearly expressing they didn't have time to stop and do stuff, he wanted to stop and attempt to use this new item that he found. And I was like, no, well, now my like cinematic scene has been like ruined. Not essentially, I just said, well, it doesn't work. And then he kind of got there and was like, salty. And now that I understand why now. That was me as a new DM. I was like, well, we're not playing a movie. We're definitely trying to tell a collective story.
That brings a question to my mind for the two of you. Do either one of you, or have either one of you, tried to monologue with a big bad evil guy?
I have not. I've never actually. You say good, but I do actually kind of like monologues. Not always. Like, I don't think that they're absolutely necessary, but there's like a certain flavor of bad guy that gets a monologue. And like, there's so many different like archetypes of a villain and BBEG that you can go with. But like, there's something to be said about that classic like Bond villain who like explains his plan to you and how dastardly he is, and
yes,
you're going to sit there and you're going to listen to me, and there's nothing you can fucking do about it. You know why? Because I hold all the cards, and I'm smarter than you. And
the characters have to fear them. Yes,
yeah.
And then watching that guy fail, like, is that much sweeter because he was a cocky dickhead. But I've never done it. No. I want I want there to be a character that like gets under my player's skin enough to where I could do that, to where I can play that dastardly guy who thinks that he's smarter. But you know, obviously I'm rooting for the players. I'm on the player side, so I want him to fail, but I want it to be spectacular.
Yeah.
So short story long, no, I haven't.
Yeah, that's something for you new DMs out there. You're gonna want a monologue, and it's good. like he was saying, you have to have that bad guy, that villain that commands the respect of both the players and the character. I had a bad guy who I still love him to this day. He was the worst, but he was the best for a DM. He had the characters come and sit down at a table, and he said, my servants are putting the most poisonous substance on this planet in front of you right now. I suggest that you all drink it. And he cast mass suggestion, and they all fail. He was the wizards that can bend reality a little bit. I can't think of the class right now, but he basically divination. That's the one with the portents. And he used his portents to make them all fail. And they all drank, and it wasn't poison. He just went, now we have our solid footing. And then he monologued. They're all like, okay, well, let's listen to what he has to say, because now we're all scared. So
definitely,
I like.
Yeah, you got to scare the characters, and you got to scare the players before you can monologue.
I think that's a good start. So I don't monologue as an evil person because, one, I personally as a person am bad at monologues, but I try to make the players feel cool by, for example, an entry into a guild, like being presented to them in like an epic kind of way. For instance, I had in this same campaign one of my very first campaigns, I had the players compete against NPCs, who were just off doing my predetermined thing and succeeding my predetermined way. But they came back and they had stolen the most expensive item they could possibly find and trying to get into this thieves guild that was underground. And they instead received like this letter with disappearing ink to like meet them at the waterfall. And they came to the waterfall and there was this big, like they were in a line and like they were all being presented to like why you're able to be entered into this thieves guild specifically to you. And it was very cool for the player that was for, but it also got boring for the people who weren't there because I was monologuing a little too much.
And you said that it was just the one player who was being inducted into the Thieves Guild?
Yeah, and that's really where the group was headed. They were kind of like, okay, well, we just want to follow along this person's dreams. So, I mean, it kind of also brings in a topic of, like, how do you engage everyone into everyone else's stories at the table versus pinpointing like scenes where someone will be playing straight for 2 hours and another group hasn't been in the scene or talked at all. I think one of the better things that you can do that I've been implementing a lot in my DM games, especially if parties split, is an A team and a B team, and you constantly flip back and forth between what they're doing.
Yeah, mini cliffhangers. Yeah.
Mini cliffhangers.
That is one of my favorite things to do. Even if it's something small, even if it's just like, well, we need to go, pick up some potions. All right, we're gonna hang back in the inn or in the tavern. I will put little small things that will interest them, and then I'll cut away, so they have some time to process, to think about it, to kind of like, how am I gonna interact? What's going on? Like, I like when a DM does that, because nobody likes to be sitting there at the table for an hour and a half, sipping on your Mountain Dew, eating your Doritos, just waiting for your damn ass turn to RP. It's not fun. Like, I mean, it is a collaborative storytelling game, so you need to like collaborate. Like, so I want to like push the party back together, but also I want to give them a reason to want to be back together, and I like you said, the mini cliffhangers to get them there, give them a reason to come back together.
For sure. And I think like a negative experience that I have personally had as a player was during a Fateful Encounters game, because not everything is perfect, sunshine and rainbows, but I play a character who willingly chose to singly split from the party. The rest of the party was going to do a jailbreak, and my character was going to go get cannons for a ship so that when the group gets back from the jailbreak, they'll be ready to go. So I willingly chose to do one single task and wait at the ship, so I sat there the entire game watching this happen. I chose for that to happen. And in that moment, I realized as a player in that moment was that there really wasn't anything I could do unless I suddenly would say, I guess I'll go check on them in the jail. Like, that's not, like, natural. So you also have to, I would say, chat with the players. If they do choose to make decisions like that, they do have to be okay with not doing anything. They could also just go home for the day if you're in person. If they really just wanted to do one single thing and not engage in what the main thing is, then that's kind of their choice. And that's okay to make them sit there. Because ultimately, coming from myself, I chose to do that. And I was like, well, my character would not go back because she said she was doing this. And I was like, cool. So I sat there for our 2.5 hour game that is live streamed, quiet, eating my snackies and hanging out.
And one thing you can do in the situation as the DM, if you have that one person who's just sitting there because of their own decisions, look at them as this big fun thing is happening. Look at, like, take a quick 5-second break from that. Look at them unapologetically and say, you chose this, and then continue. And as long as you own that situation with them, they'll usually be like, yeah, you're right. I totally did. And
100%.
Then it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that that kind of situation goes two very different ways depending on what type of game you're playing. Like
Definitely.
In a streamed game, like that's hard to balance. Like it's not easy when, you know, the game has a plan, kind of, and like a streamed game has to be kind of more concise than a regular game, and it has to be not railroady by any means, but like it needs to be rather cohesive. And when you're more like an in-person game or an off-stream game, like I personally have enjoyed when DMs have gone into like one shot, or not like one shots, but solo player sessions, if a player decides to make a decision to go off on their own. I haven't done that because I am not super confident in my DMing ability to be able to one-on-one. But I think that it is a great way to kind of keep them engaged, maybe potentially have more story tie-ins. Like some of the coolest sessions that I've had as a player, as an underprepared player, if you will, were with, you know, my DM for Questvault doing a solo session, and he comes up with something super cool in homebrew for me that ties into the story.
Yeah, and with that too, you don't have to, you know, because D&D is D&D. The big bad evil guy of Dungeons and Dragons is getting a group together at the same time.
That's true.
If you can't get that group time together, what I always do is I usually will just send them messages on Facebook or text. And what do? Okay, roll a die. And I trust them enough that I'll let them roll a die without me seeing it. It's fine. And it's usually something that's side questy anyway. And yeah, I get a lot of engagement with my players from just doing that, because they don't have time to come out to where I live in the far west valley of Phoenix, Arizona, when they all live in the far east valley. So text messaging back and forth for a few minutes, that's good. People like that.
Yeah, and you know, I think that it's super important to have that open communication of like, what is your intention? Like, what are you trying to do here? And that's something that I feel like a lot of DMs are kind of scared to ask. Like, they almost use like the DM screen as like a separation. Like, they don't want to tell the players their intention, and they don't want the players to tell them their intention. They kind of want to fumble around in the dark, like you know, it's their first time at romance, so to speak. But like, I think one of the most important like questions that I've learned to ask as a DM is like, what are you trying to accomplish here? Like, what, like, sure, you want to use acrobatics, but what are you actually trying to do? Or, you know, you're going off on your own. What's the end goal? What are you doing? Like, you're going towards this person's house that we have, like, maybe in my mind you haven't interacted with, but if I can get that intention out of them, I can start to work around it. And I would say that as far as DMs go, I am not an overprepared DM at all. I am on the other end of things. I am, when it comes to D&D and even back when I played Pathfinder, it's just been a lot of winging it. Like, I have loose ideas of like themes and things that I want to hit on, some story beats, but like, ultimately I kind of let the players have the reins, and I'll try and fit my story with what they come up with, and or my player characters. You know, I have a loose idea of what I want to do with that character, and I'll kind of like work back from the information that I and my party give me. So it's all about intention and being clear with that with everyone. Well, not necessarily with everyone, but with between the DM and the player.
Definitely. I mean, I completely agree. And I think a little bit more of a simple explanation of what that might look like is a character walks into a room and kind of just says, well, I'm looking around. It seems like they're kind of fishing for an answer that might not be there. It's like, well, I'm looking around. It's like, well, what are you doing? What are you looking for? And if they don't know, then why are they, like, what's their intention? Why are they looking around? So trying to get them to explain to you really, really helps you guys have, like, a cohesive story and also understanding what's going on. I think that's probably hopefully at least a good example of what that might look like for a new DM.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree.
Yeah, and there's another side to this coin too. Your players aren't going to trust you. They're not. Because you have all these schemes and things behind the screen that, you know, story reveals, bad guys that are going to show up, NPC betrayals, all of it. But they're going to want to, like, hide their intention because they're going to think that you're going to, you know, try to foil their plans in a metagamey way. Don't do that. Make sure you build that kind of trust where it's like, guys, I'm not gonna make you just fail. We're gonna role play through this. We're gonna roll through this. Just what are you trying to do? The bad guys don't know what I know. I know what they know, not the other way around.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's an important distinction. Is like I think you need to set the precedent pretty early on that as a DM, you're not working against your players. You are working with them. Again, collaborative storytelling. Like that's so important. Like if I felt like my players didn't trust me, like they couldn't tell me what they want to do with their character, that would be the worst feeling in the world as a DM to me. Like I want to make what they have come to life in this world, and I want it to be real.
Yeah, that makes 100% perfect sense. And your players are going to want to, like, spring things on you too. They think that their plan's going to surprise you and all that. I get that. That's what my players do to me all the time. They're like, I'm not telling you what I want to do. It's like, I kind of need to know because I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sure your surprise is awesome.
I'm running the story here. Yeah, I do need to know. I do think that you can also kind of push the lines of what's, like, healthy in controlling the story. As George has emphasized, it's important for your players to know that you want, like, you're playing a game together. You're not against them. And there is also a large trope you might have heard of online or something, or from someone that you watch, is that it's very DM against the players, and it's me versus them. And that's not really how true Dungeons and Dragons is played. It might be. If that's what you want, that's great. And then you guys are fighting and all sorts of things. But that really leads into a toxic territory that I really wanted to discuss today, was toxic DMing and kind of what that means, being overbearing. And let's talk about that a bit.
Absolutely. I think that it's kind of weird when people do that, because as a DM, you hold all of the cards, every single last one of them. So when it's me against you, it's that kind of power trip. It seems odd to me because they have, and excuse the Star Wars reference, unlimited power. And it's just kind of, it feels to me like two kids playing make-believe, and one of them is just trying to top the other one. You know, you can't do that. I was invincible because I am, you know, the best. Haha. No, you can't shoot me. I shot you.
Yeah.
Ha ha ha. And toxic is a very good way to describe it, because I think it's the wrong outlook.
It is. And I'm gonna piggyback on your Star Wars reference there a little bit. No one has Emperor Palpatine posters on their wall. No one has.
I'm sure one person might.
Okay, maybe one person might.
I do have a Palpatine poster.
Well, okay.
I was saying that is the one person.
But Darth Vader is everywhere. And what did, if you look at Star Wars as a D&D campaign, Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie, they're the D&D, they're the characters, right? The characters had an opportunity to interact with Darth Vader and change him. Maybe you didn't have that plan for Darth, but it happened anyway. So that's everyone loves Darth Vader. I love Darth Vader. I mean, he's great. because there's layers and there's change and there's growth and there's arcs. So that's better for everybody than the unlimited power. So
I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah. And I would say that Star Wars as a whole agrees, because that was not the original plan for Star Wars at all.
No.
The original plan was for Luke to go dark at the end. Like, that was supposed to be the twist ending. And the complete opposite happened. And I think that that's a really good, I don't want to say thought experiment, but that's a really good lesson to take away as a DM. You kind of got to be fluid. You got to sometimes kill your darlings. And the tighter that you grip those plans, the more those players are going to fight against you and try and find that wiggle room.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, though. It's like, being more powerful than your players is ultimately too easy to do. You have a level 1, throw them against a dragon. Easy, you did it. Ooh, you're so strong. It's too easy to do. It's supposed to be challenging for you also, and challenging for the players, especially, as I constantly say, the DM is a player as well. So if you're creating a combat encounter that is too easy, it's not fun for you either, because you're just getting wiped off the board. If you make it too hard, it's not fun for the other players. So you need to just create a really, maybe not complex, but you need to make a really cohesive and fun encounter. Sometimes it's hard, and you learn your players are way stronger than you think they are.
Yes.
And suddenly you have to throw in a couple more wolves that just, they just appeared. But but
no, it's all right. They're
too
pack
easy
animals.
to be too good. They are pack animals. That's true. Sorry, my example was too head on.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, no, it's a hard thing too, and I get it. I get it. If you're a DM and you're super excited to sit down and have your players play in your story, and you're excited for the power, you're excited for all of that, I get it. I totally understand. But and you're listening to this going, oh shit, what am I doing? It's okay. Talk to your players about it. If you played a session and you realize you're going that direction, talk to your players about it and say, hey guys, I'm sorry. I've done something here I didn't want to do. Can we go back? Can we reboot? Whatever. Your players want to play. So don't feel bad if you're doing this and you have the self-realization that you're doing this and your players don't like your game. Just talk to them, be honest, be open, and people have the ability to forgive and then move on and grow as a DM, grow as a D&D player. It make you better for it.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say that that's just a good lesson in life for growth. But also, I might be going a little bit too ham on the board gamey GM and DMs out there, because I personally lost, I think, 8 characters in one campaign to a DM or a GM who played like that in Pathfinder First Edition. And it hurt. It hurt a lot. I put a lot of thought into every single one of those characters, backstory and how they were going to be different and what their goals were. And then by the time I got to 6, 7, and finally the 8th character, I was kind of done. I checked out. There was a situation where I was playing a ninja in Pathfinder First Edition, and for the players out there who maybe and DMs who have never played First Edition Pathfinder, your characters are kind of like specialists at what they do. So he was kind of stealthy, and he was behind a bunch of troops, and he kind of snuck up, stabbed one in the ass, and ducked down into a barrel. And 7 of the enemies turned around and just destroyed my character. And it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me at the time, and it just seemed like my GM was kind of out to get me, and it was very unfortunate because I left that session feeling upset at my friend who was GMing, and upset at the game that I loved so much, and it was just a bummer. And eventually I ended up making a min-max character, which is very much not like me at all. And I was like level 3 and I was rolling like 6 d8s, and he was like, what is happening? And I'm like, nothing. I haven't even started raging yet. And it was a whole thing. But you know, I just don't think that it's a good environment for fun, at least in Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons. And I think there are systems out there that are really good for the board game aspect of things. I would say 4th edition is even really good for the board game type of thing. Mm-hmm. But I think that most people who sit down with the expectation to play 5th edition or Pathfinder 1st edition don't want that.
Yeah, and this is really all about communication at the end of the day.
Yeah.
This is a little real. I have a family now. I've always had a family, but I have a new family now.
What happened to your family, Nick?
Yeah, no, they're all here. I have them too. They're all right. But no, I have a new family now because of D&D, because of TTRPGs. You know,
yeah.
I hung out with one of my players on Saturday. We played board games just randomly. So you have a better experience having a table full of happy players who want to hug you as they're leaving your house and who openly say, hey, I love you. We are good friends. That's the level of friendship that you can gain from this freaking game that people make fun of in certain circles. And that's way more fulfilling than the power you hold behind the screen that fades away into nothingness as soon as the game ends. So,
yeah,
you know, grow that family, make that, if you want to make that your goal. These can be really, really good friends that you make. And it's through your storytelling as a vehicle that does that. And you should enjoy that and nurture that. And sincerely, if you fear you're one of these DMs who's slipping away into the, that DM versus player mentality, message me on Instagram or Twitter and we'll talk. I am dead serious. I want you guys to have fun and I want you guys to enjoy this game like I enjoy it. And I'm sure like these two lovely people I'm talking to enjoy it as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really feel like at the end of the day, if you're losing a friendship over a game, mm-hmm. it's not worth it. You're allowed to also, I've said this multiple times throughout the podcast, you're allowed to leave the table, even if that mm-hmm. table is your friends. You're allowed to not play with them. You're allowed to stop playing Monopoly if that's what you're playing. You're also allowed to stop playing D&D with your friends. Especially if arguments are happening and if you're going to lose your friends over it. It's not worth it. At the end of the day, it's a game.
Mm-hmm. And if those people that are making you uncomfortable make you feel bad for needing to leave the table because of your own emotional needs, I think you should find a new table, new people to play with. I stayed for too long at tables that made me uncomfortable because I didn't have any other tables at the time, or because I thought that I didn't deserve more respect, I guess. And honestly, like, D&D helped me find who I was, become a more confident person, and be able to walk away from relationships like that because of the things that I learned and the things that I did at the table.
D&D's just out here changing lives, people. It's true, though.
It's true. Jinx.
We talked about a lot of things. We've talked about like overcomplicating, like exposition and stories. We talked about like maybe moments where players might not be having fun. We talked about rooting for players and also wanting the B-bag to fail. I know I say B-bag. Everyone else says BBEG. Don't at me.
I'm gonna at you right now.
Balancing party splitting, the having intention in everything that you do, building trust, toxic DMing, and communicating with your players. George, was there anything that you specifically wanted to bring to us today that you felt would be a good topic of conversation for new DMs?
I mean, I feel like we've touched on a lot that's really good for new DMs. But like yeah, don't be afraid to communicate. Don't be afraid to just run a game either. Like, I know this is overprepared DM, but I'm gonna keep pushing my rhetoric of you don't have to overprepare. It is perfectly fine to be not prepared for a game and go into it, and you might just be able to riff with your players the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, some of my favorite stuff has been unplanned things, and just everybody's rolling with the punches. Everyone's having a good time.
So, George, you talked about how you don't like prepare a lot of the time to go into games. So do you have like an outline of where you want to go? How do you prepare to not be prepared? For instance,
that is the most Jen question you could ask on this podcast.
I'm
Jen.
Sorry, I need to know.
This is amazing.
Here's my thought, and why I'm asking is that I need to know so that in the event that I am not prepared and I am having scared feelings about how the game is going to go, how do I tell myself as a brand new DM that it's going to be good? What's a go-to easy thing that we can talk to DMs who are overprepared, and maybe they might not be one day? What do we tell them? What do we do? Give us the insight, George.
So I say, like, if I can't fit something on a 3x5 card, it's too much at this point. Like, if it I think that it really helps, like, creativity flourishes under constraint. So you need to, like, pull back a little bit. Like we mentioned, like, we had grandiose plans the first time that we DM'd, and there was a bit of disaster mixed in there. And I think the disaster is important. I think that oh, I fucked up feeling, like, taught us a really important lesson that we probably didn't repeat. Like, there are a few things that teach people a lesson, like a social situation where we feel embarrassed, you know, like, it's a response in your body to never want to do that ever again. Like, oh no, I don't want to go through that again. But, like, we DM'd again, and we changed, and we adapted. So, like, don't be afraid to screw up. I think that's also super important. But to kind of get back onto track about how to be an underprepared, overprepared DM, just like, if you don't know what your game is going to be, write some words that you associate onto a 3x5 card, and just kind of, like, look back at those for inspiration. You know, I don't always know what a character is going to be like, but I'll, like, choose 2 or 3 adjectives from a list of adjectives that I have behind my behind my DM screen, and I'll be like, okay, this guy's going to be hyper and boisterous, and then I just kind of go off of that and I start role playing. And, you know, some of my players' favorite characters have come up like that, or NPCs, I should say.
Yeah, definitely. I have notoriously had over-prepared characters, and then they ask me something about a random passerby, and I'm like, all right, time to figure this out. And depending on the context, I'll, make it anything. At one point, I crafted an entire art show in, like, an art museum that was run by this Yanti, and she was slithering about past them, and they were interested in the snake lady, so they were like, yes, let's talk to this person. And I was like, no, I just said Yanti, oh no. So then I just, like, in the moment was like, yes, she's an artist, and she's crafting, and she's on her way to the art show, and then suddenly they were like, I'm interested in this art show because I'm interested in you. So the whole game was overthrown by this art show, and it's really just a matter of being okay with putting your notes aside and talking in the moment and making a good story based on where they're going. Because ultimately, think about walking around downtown in a place you've never been. You're probably going to be pulled in bunches of different directions, unless, I don't know, maybe you're my dad and you go to the store and get one item and leave. Who knows?
I could also be like that, but, you know, that's a topic for a different podcast.
But yeah, exercise those improv muscles. You're going to need them if you're going to keep DMing. let those weird things happen, and then just let your brain take over. It's going to get weird. It's going to get crazy, and your players are going to love it. So just go with it. You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Yeah, I think it's a blast. And also kind of going back to the card thing, it's a good way to like set yourself up in the future, because not only are you exercising that muscle to be able to do it later on, you have these cards and you kind of like can now associate them with something, even if it's something minor, and you can reuse those. Like I do the same thing with monsters. If it doesn't fit on a 3x5 card, obviously this doesn't work with enemies with like legendary actions and stuff, like once it starts to get a little bit more complicated. But like the early levels, I might not even know what I'm like exactly going to run for enemies, but like I have, a CR2 monster, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll change it on the fly, and maybe I'll add +1 to strength instead of +1 to dex. And this is a fucking half orc clan that they just happen to stumble upon. And, they're asking, why are you eating our food source, kind of thing. And now it's conflict, but next time it's going to be a group of bugbears. Who knows?
I really enjoy random encounters. It's kind of what you just mentioned. I haven't actually had a random encounter that was truly random. I know online there are so many random encounter tables that you can just pull up and roll a die or press the randomize and it'll say like this happens or something like that. Like, how do you guys plan random encounters? Do you, or do you have a table like that?
I make my own tables. I make a D8 table and I theme it to wherever they're at or wherever they're going. I don't want to go over 8. That gets crazy. You can do people who do D100 tables, which is just that's overprepared. Don't do that. But sure. I usually have like 1 or 2 like weather based encounters. So something happens where they lose a day of travel, or they have to survive in the elements, or they lose something, or I also have like 2 RP encounters on there, where it's usually have like a traveling caravan that I've never rolled now that I think about it. But yeah, have like a traveling caravan that they can like buy stuff from, and an NPC that they can meet that might be a follower. So I have, and then 2 encounters, 1 easy and then 1 that's hard on there too. And so I have a mix on there, and I can talk about how I get to the rolls way later. It's super complicated, but that a D8 table that I make myself that's themed to the area they're at works just fine for me.
I just don't have like random encounters, so to speak. Like I come up with the random encounter. Like even if I have to come up with just a monster on the fly, like stat block wise, I will. And I might like fudge it a little bit behind the DM screen, but like it's never to like make them suffer in any way. It's just so that it'll be an interesting encounter. And I usually try and have the like the difficulty or the interesting part, like, or the difficult part about combat being like environmental, so that it's interesting, or like there's something like special about the monster, like they have a special weakness, and it's like an old like Legend of Zelda monster, like, or Legend of Zelda boss, where there's a way to take them down, and they might find it, and but I try and come up with these things on the fly if it's kind of like a travel type of combat scenario like you were describing. But I've played entire campaigns where DMs did like roll charts, and I'm like, why are we in the middle of this wood elf like area and we're fighting an Archon? This feels bad. Like, this doesn't make narrative sense to me, and it kind of took me out of it. So I'm not a fan of the random tables, but it sounds like you have a pretty tight grip on your type of random table.
They're crafted to flesh out the world. That's really all they're there for, is to make it feel like the world is alive, and not to put a barricade in front of the players or give them a chance to die. It really is just like they're there to make the world feel vibrant and give it color. So there's something for them to interact with more than it is for like a difficult challenge for them to overcome to get to the end to finish the story. Yeah.
Yeah, random encounters do not come naturally to me. The idea of a random encounter stresses me out, even as I have practiced over the many a year to not be an overprepared DM. I will write out, or at least have specific quote random encounters specific to like the city that they're in, or specific to the trek that they're on. But my argument is that it appears random to the players, such as like getting pickpocketed while they're walking around the district or something like that. That appears random. But I planned it. I wrote about it. I know that kid's backstory. I know why he's stealing. But I think random encounters can be fun. I have attempted one single time in my entire DMing career. I have attempted one time to just roll off of the website that I kind of mentioned, the like D100 random encounter, and it was like the one that came up. I put it in my head as like, this is gonna be it. I'm not rolling again. I'm not rolling another time. And the thing that came up was like a wizard formed a forest fire like a mile away, and the smoke is coming their way. And I was like, what? There's no magic in this area. But then I just rolled with it. I don't know. It worked out fine, and the players didn't think too much into it. But in my mind, with my fleshed out homebrew world, I was like, ah. But is there any lasting one-liner, or at least one tip, that you would just like to be left in your print for any DM? A do's, a don't. What is your one solid advice?
I would, it's hard to settle on one because there's so many different facets to this game. Have fun. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about having fun. No. Not have fun. Facilitate fun, because the fun will happen naturally. As long as you are setting up a situation for everyone to have fun, everyone will have fun. Also, on the underprepared DM side of things, if any new DMs out there have never checked out the Lazy DM Guide, I would highly recommend it. Mm-hmm. I think it's an amazing book, an amazing resource that teaches you how to kind of be a minimalist DM.
Yeah, it's good.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think I've said it before in the podcast, but I will say it again. When he said facilitate fun, that's the perfect way to describe it. You're gonna stress, you are gonna work, you're gonna get tired, you're gonna have the DM come down after the session's over, where you just go into a deep depression for like 18 hours before you're like, I can be human again. Great. But at the end of the day, when you're sitting there looking across at over your DM screen at your players, and they're all smiling, or they're crying because there was an emotional impact on them, or whatever it is, you're going to have the biggest sense of fulfillment, because you're facilitating fun for the whole group. This is why I DM over play. I love to play too. I want to do it one day again, sometime in the near decades, hopefully. But like looking over my DM screen and seeing my players enjoying every morsel, every moment at the table, there's nothing like it, and I can't recommend it more.
And before I give us our closing statement, I just want the world to know that EmoAasimar tweeted, Jen is online as a bee bag. BEEBEG. Love it. But
I had to spell it out.
It was great. Oh, today was really fun. I appreciate you hanging out with us, George.
Yeah.
And My name is Jen. You can find me over on Jen is Online, anywhere you can think of. I also stream Mondays with Fateful Encounters. And Nick.
I'm Nick. You can EmoAasimar at Twitter and Instagram, and Southwest Gaming Society on Twitch. We stream on Wednesdays.
And George.
Well, hello. You can find me every Friday at 6:30 p.m. PST on Quest Vault, playing a Hobgoblin, at least until our campaign ends in, I don't know how long. It's less than a year. We've been going for 2 years, and we've got less than a year now. And I'm I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do afterwards. Like, this has been the longest, best campaign of my life, so
love it. I love it.
You can also find him over on George W. Ambush on Twitch and Instagram and Twitter.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Twitter is George W. Ambush QV. Because some bastard out there has my damn ass name. He hasn't tweeted since like 2007.
How dare he?
I'm gonna find him.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with us today. We will see you next Sunday. Hopefully you had a good drive to work. We will see you next time.
Yes.
Bye.
Goodbye.